One thing that you most definitely cannot say about this Kings team is that they are boring. They bring the excitement every single night, and as a Kings fan, can be fun and it can be not so fun, and those feelings can change very quickly. And man, this game, I was feeling all the feelings. I was even jumping out of my seat and two-hand like slapping the ground. And I'll let you guess which play that was because of, and then I'll mention it when I get there. But man, this game was stressful. But in overtime, they get it done. And at this point of the season, with 16 games left, 15 games now, I believe, it is just about getting those wins, and the Kings have a 5 game stretch here that they really need to take advantage of playing easier opposition. And so this is a good start. I hesitate to say good, but at the end of the day, you get the win, so that is a good start to this 5 game stretch. They need to win, I would say, 4 of them to really be feeling good going into the last tougher stretch of the season. It would be great if they could win all 5, but we know, of course, with this team, all 5 will probably come down right to the end, and we'll see what happens. But this was just another one of those games where the Kings are going up against opposition that they should clearly beat at home. A Grizzlies team with, I think, 8 available players and some guys that I've never heard of. And each time we play the Grizzlies, I'm just learning about new guys. But they're out here playing Jake Laravia 41 minutes, Gigi Jackson playing 44 minutes. And so that's how shorthanded they were. But the Kings, because of just mental mistakes and getting out hustled, they let the Grizzlies into this game, and that's a similar formula for how they've let some other games slip. And it's defensive rebounding in this one, which isn't usually the problem for the Kings. That one was a bit of a new one for this game. But then just the unforced turnovers. And so you look at Memphis's points off turnovers, they had 27. Second chance points, they had 23. So 50 out of their 111 points came in those 2 categories. They shot 37.8% from the field, only 34% from 3, but they scrapped defensively, and the Kings at times just turned their brains off when handling the ball, and then they hustled on the offensive glass, and that was what got them here. Obviously, you had Kevin Huerter going down early in this one, which sucked, with a shoulder injury where he got hit on the wrist. I guess it just like pulled his shoulder. I don't know what happened. That really sucks. At times, the Kings offense went stagnant. A lot of times throughout this game, it went very stagnant, and there was a lot of just dribbling. And in those moments, you're just thinking, man, we need, Kevin Huerter coming off that Sabonis handoff to get something going here. And so that was obviously a miss in this game. But we have Keon Ellis to step up right into that place, and Malik Monk, of course. And so those are 2 very good guys to have to come in and perform in his place. And Keon Ellis, man, this dude is just incredible. He had 5 blocks, 1 steal, picked up 7 rebounds. I mean, just incredible defense, clutch defensive plays down the stretch and in overtime against Desmond Bane, guarding Desmond Bane, forcing him into tough shots. He got a massive steal down the stretch in the 4th quarter. He got a shot clock violation, like forced a shot clock violation, because he was harassing Desmond Bane in overtime. And then, when the game was pretty much over, he had that dumb turnover where he leaves his feet and throws it to the other team. But then he made up for it. He fouled. I thought maybe got away with a take foul there. So that could have been bad. But it turned out to be a smart foul because they didn't call a take foul. So, prevented that fast break opportunity. And then he just gets this like massive block steal and makes up for it. It's just, he's so good. And the Kings are just so much better defensively when he is on the floor. And when he gets minutes, the Kings are just a different team defensively. And so it's a blessing to have that type of guy to be able to step into the starting lineup when Kevin Huerter goes out. Obviously, we've been talking about should he start anyways. It'll probably be forced now, obviously not the way that we wanted that to happen. but it feels like the Kings have not been able to develop guys and find these guys in the second round or undrafted from the G League. They haven't been able to find them and really develop them into rotational players ever that I've seen. And so it's really exciting for one of those guys that the front office saw something in and gave a chance as, undrafted out of Alabama, for him to actually become something and become really, really good. I mean, you look on the other side in Memphis, and they've had a lot of those guys, it feels like, with Vince Williams being a great example and kind of a similar story to Keon Ellis. Vince didn't play in this one, but coming into the season, it felt like we needed somebody to step up because we had our five in the starting lineup. We had, 2 to 3 guys off the bench that felt secure. And then it's just like we need somebody else to step up, especially from the wing slash guard position, just as a defender. And so you're thinking either Chris Duarte, Kessler Edwards. And I wasn't really thinking Keon Ellis. I mean, I think I did say that Keon Ellis was a possibility, but I didn't really think that that would happen this season. And so for him to be stepping up and playing like this is just massive. And then, talking about Chris Duarte as well, obviously stepping in because Kevin Huerter goes down, so he's getting minutes as well. And he comes in, knocks down 2 threes, goes 3 for 6. And he's been shooting much better. He had a really nice take to the rim. And that the Chris Duarte situation, to me, a guy that we kind of just took a flyer on for 2 second round picks over the offseason, it feels very similar to the Dante DiVincenzo situation where you're bringing in a guy who has been struggling with injuries in the past season, and he comes in, he's just not really shooting well, he's kind of all over the place. That's pretty much the exact same thing that happened with Dante DiVincenzo. And obviously with DiVincenzo, we let him go and brought in Malik Monk and Kevin Huerter, so no one really talks about it, but DiVincenzo has absolutely shined in New York. And I'm not saying that Chris Duarte will get to that level, but you can see him finding his footing these past, couple of months and being able to knock down his shots and looking more like the scorer he was as a rookie, not being as erratic defensively. And so that's really good to see. And I think the Kings' depth in this one just showed out. Last game, I talked so much about how the Kings just got nothing from the bench at all outside of Malik Monk pretty much. And in this game, it was just a totally different story. Malik Monk, Mr. Overtime, one of the leading scorers in the league in overtime, with this being the Kings' 6th overtime game. They're now 5-1, mainly due to Malik Monk's shot making in overtime. He is incredible and just steps up in those moments. He had 28 points. You have Duarte with 8, Keon with 5 points, and obviously the defense, and Alex Len with 6 points. And Alex Len was really good defending around the rim. At the start of the fourth quarter, Jaren Jackson Jr. started to figure him out, started to use his speed and exploit Len a little bit. But at that point, Len just used some fouls up and then got out of the game, and Sabonis was in for the rest of the game. So he was able to pretty much give enough minutes, and then just barely at the end, when Memphis started figuring him out and how to attack him, then he doesn't even need to play anymore. So just in his limited minutes, he was really good. And so the bench bailing us out of a very, very sloppy game. I guess just going back to the start, the first quarter was a very bad quarter for the Kings, even though they only were down 4 at the end of it. Could have been 7 if Jake LaRavia didn't step out of bounds there on that last play. But the 3-point defense was just awful. The Grizzlies constantly just spotting up behind the line and firing. And it felt like the Kings were just always late to get out to them. They just weren't locked in at the start, and the Grizzlies were knocking them down. But when you have a guy like, Santi Aldama or Desmond Bane or Jake LaRavia, like, these are guys that can sit out there and shoot, especially Santi Aldama. Like, you got to close to him. He's going to pull it from very far out. And so the Kings just weren't locked in. They weren't ready to go get out to those shooters. And then offensively, the Kings, they were fine. Keegan missed a lot of open shots, which wasn't a great sign, but for the most part, offensively, they were fine. Duarte was big with kind of keeping us going in that first quarter, coming in, hitting 2 threes. Also, the Kings were able to draw 2 fouls on both Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson Jr. Domas was going right at Jaren early and was having success. And in the middle part of that first quarter, they had some good defense. But it's just, the first part of the quarter and the last part of the quarter, they just completely fell apart. And even you have the Grizzlies go into the free throw line missing both, but they had taken Sabonis out of the game because they wanted shooters because it was like 5 seconds left or something. So then what happens when you leave Harrison Barnes as the guy to, box out and Keegan on the other side? Like, that's not great rebounding. And what happens? The Grizzlies get the rebound and I think they hit a three, which then was reviewed and taken off. It would have been a 14-2 run if that three wasn't taken off. The Grizzlies thought that that was their 8th three-pointer of the game, but in fact, they only hit 7 in that first quarter, and they didn't get to 8 until there was less than a minute to go in the second quarter. So much, much better defense in the second quarter. The Kings came out much more locked in. I talked about Len's defense, but he was just really good protecting the rim. And same can be said for Sabonis. Sabonis did really well against Jaren, forcing him in for 8 for 27 from the field for Jaren. 25 points on 27 shots. That is not good. And Jaren was just completely out of control. Like, people say Sabonis has no bag. No, Jaren actually has no bag. He has no moves. He just barrels. And Sabonis drew a huge charge late against him, and Keegan tried to do the same, but just got barreled over, and there was no call. But they were exploiting Jaren just being completely out of control and just driving straight at the rim, and Sabonis would just stand there with his arms up, and Jaren would try to finish over him and shout for a foul, and it wasn't working. And so I thought he was very disciplined defensively, because there was a moment where Alex Len, kind of late in the game, he did it multiple times actually, where he reached in against Jaren, and I'm like, no, you just got to go straight up against this guy and force him to finish over you. One time when he reached in, he got a flagrant foul. That was rough. That wasn't a flagrant, but whatever. But the way they were guarding Jaren was huge. The problem, though, with the way they were guarding Jaren is if you have Sabonis getting a verticality there, it's going to be tough for him or Len to grab the rebound. And so you need other guys rebounding. Keegan did a good job. He grabbed 10 boards, had 7 defensive rebounds. But Memphis got 15 offensive rebounds. I already mentioned all their second chance points. Part of it has to do with them missing 61 shots. So, you're going to get rebounds off of missed shots. It's almost impossible to have a team never get an offensive rebound, and 15, it's not the worst number when you look at 61 missed shots, but it also could have been much better. But on the other side, the Kings were able to grab 15 of their own. Sabonis had 7 offensive rebounds, and so it did even out in that sense. And really, defensively is not where the Kings let the Grizzlies in the game. It was gifting them points off of turnovers and just not playing well offensively. But what I will say is that it's much easier to win a game late when you're the better team and you're performing defensively rather than offensively. Because if you can get those stops, if you're the better team with the better players, you can get enough scores on the other end in clutch time probably. And that's pretty much what happened. Is Fox making a clutch shot down the stretch. You have Monk making all those clutch shots in overtime, and the Kings got stops down the stretch. And so I think this just goes back to the conversation that I was having, I think it was after the last game against the Knicks, of this kind of floor versus ceiling, of I'd rather have Keon as the defensive guy to raise the floor rather than a Kevin Huerter to raise the ceiling. And I do think the end of this game is an example of that. The Kings definitely missed their fair share of good looks. Like Keegan, he shot 6 for 17, 2 for 8 from 3, had some very good looks. 1 for 4 from the free throw line after coming in with the second longest active made free throw streak. So that streak was very much broken. And so you have him missing good looks. You had Sabonis going 6 for 17, but 13 for 15 from the free throw line. So that was great. But Sabonis couldn't hit. He didn't hit too many jumpers outside of that. Although I like the ones that he was taking. I will say, I want Sabonis to keep taking the jumpers that he was taking. I thought he took a good amount, and I thought they were good quality, the ones that he needed to take within the offense. He knocked one down at the end of the shot clock. Those are the ones I want to see him taking. And so I thought they were good shot attempts. He took 2 threes. I'm totally fine with him taking 2 threes a game. But knocking down the free throws is big for him. He definitely missed some easy ones at the rim. And there was the one play where he misses a very easy shot at the rim, just to then rip the ball away from whoever got the rebound on the Grizzlies and then get the and one. And the Kings had opportunities to extend the lead in that second quarter, didn't really take them, but then kind of took them towards the end of the quarter. I thought Fox kind of picked his spots well towards the end of that quarter. He didn't take too many shots in this game, only 16, and he took 7 threes, but he had the three-pointer falling, and that was in the third quarter. I thought he picked his spot well in the second quarter to be able to extend the lead towards the end of it, and Kings were able to get a 10-point lead at halftime. But then I would have liked to see him be a little more aggressive with his shot in the second half, especially when things weren't going well or when the Kings were turning the ball over. And coming out of that third quarter, I mean, it was just so sloppy. I think they had 5 turnovers within the first few minutes. Maybe it was 4 straight turnovers, I thought is what they said on the broadcast. Grizzlies went on a 10-0 run. Keegan finally hit an open three to put a stop to that run. And then Keegan also got to the line and then went 1 for 2. But then got a steal, then a dunk, then had good rim protection. So Keegan really did a good job of stopping that run and righting the ship. And so the Kings didn't give up the lead, but they also didn't, extend the lead, put the game away. And it was just because of unforced errors and not being locked in to start that third quarter. And again, the Kings they couldn't pull away even when they did right the ship. And they couldn't pull away because they just, they weren't hitting shots. The offense wasn't quite right, and the Grizzlies were competing defensively. And so when you're against a team that's competing defensively and you're not knocking down your threes, you really can't have those moments of bad decision making, especially like 4 turnovers in a row with a timeout in between. Like Barnes had 2 bad turnovers. Fox had a lot of bad turnovers. He ended with 6. And just like the nonchalant manner of some of these turnovers is infuriating. It was interesting when the Grizzlies started blitzing Fox. I don't think they were doing that earlier in the game, and he wasn't even scoring, but then they just start blitzing him. And then it felt like he took offense, or he's like, oh, you're going to blitz me? I'm just going to pull up and knock down these threes. And he hit 3 threes in a row at the end of the third quarter. And so you'd think that would be enough for the Kings to, finally pull away. It wasn't, especially since the Grizzlies came down on the other end and got a little lucky. Like the Kings had a couple of good defensive possessions and they just didn't get the stop on them, whether it was an unlucky bounce or Desmond Bane just making a play. But again, those are the reasons that you can't have the dumb turnovers, because in the NBA, even if you play good defense, sometimes the other team's just going to score. And so giving them so many free points just really hurts. And then the fourth quarter just got way out of control. And you could tell the pace just got so frantic, and I knew it was going to be bad. You had the Kings getting 3 straight stops at the rim. You had the Ellis block to the Fox oop to Monk. And I'm not kidding you when I say this. When that Fox to Monk oop happened, I'm like, we're giving up this lead. There's something about this team that when they make a big play in the fourth quarter, they never capitalize on it. And it seems like they lose their focus because of the big play. And the other team always goes on a run. It's happened all season. And so they make that big play. Then Fox misses the 3 that would have sent Golden One into, I don't even know, a frenzy. Just that would have been insane. But he missed that, and then he just we needed to slow things down, but instead we get another stop, and Fox just goes right at Jaren, draws what we thought was a foul, and then it turned into an offensive foul after the challenge. And I'm like, this is what I'm talking about. Just got way out of control in that fourth quarter. And because of that, frantic pace, the Grizzlies were getting offensive rebounds. They were scoring in transition after a few stops from the Kings. Then they started scoring. And it's just so frustrating that I have to watch these amazing moments in the fourth quarter and be like, that's probably going to be for nothing. But that's seriously what I was thinking when that happened. Even with all these amazing plays, Monk had another big dunk. Ellis had a another big block. Alex Len made some really nice passes, especially when the Grizzlies were blitzing and he was in the middle of the floor. His decision making was good. He also had some good outlet passes, but then it was just missed shots and bad decision making. Like you had a sequence where Barnes missed he had a wide open dunk or layup and he like took a weird floater, or I think he airballed it. The Grizzlies go down and score. Then Sabonis comes down again out of control, turns it over, and Jaren gets an and one on the other end. So things just got so out of control, and the Kings just they need to learn how to play with leads in the fourth quarter, because in the first three quarters, a fast pace can definitely benefit the Kings. I mean, even in the fourth quarter, a fast pace can still be beneficial, but you just have to be more careful than what they were doing. And there's a difference between playing at a fast pace and playing out of control. And the Kings oftentimes play out of control. And you can just feel it. You can feel when things get out of control. Grizzlies went on a 10-1 run. Fox made a nice steal to end that. Keon had a big steal. But then Fox started getting frustrated with the officiating inside. That led to some moments where the Grizzlies were coming back on the other end and scoring after misses inside from Fox. And the Kings offense, they went ISO, and the Grizzlies were, well, not ISO, but it was just a lot of over dribbling. They would take a screen, get blitzed, and they just had nothing going offensively other than when they would get an offensive rebound. It felt like there were so many moments where the Kings almost got an offensive rebound and just missed out on it. Sabonis made big free throws down the stretch. And then there's the play that made me literally jump out of my seat and slap the floor with both hands. I've never done that before, but Sabonis getting the stop on Jaren, getting the rebound, and then with Santi Aldama right in front of him, just hand Santi the ball. I mean, that was incredible. And that right there is the out of control nature that the Kings play with. It would take one more second to make a safe pass to a ball handler, and that 1 second isn't going to have that big of an impact on the Kings running in transition the other way. Also, the Kings were not trying to run in transition the other way. So in this moment in the fourth quarter, they were going to slow it down anyways. So there's no point to make that dangerous pass. And just the way he just handed it to him, I mean, and then gives up the and one. That that was just so insane. That felt very much like the turnover that Fox had. I can't remember who that was against, where he just was at the Bulls, where he just threw the ball out of bounds because he was going to take a 5-second violation when he had a timeout. Thankfully, Santi Aldama missed. Gigi Jackson fouled. That's what having a 19-year-old in the game at that point does, although I'm sure the Kings would have done a similar thing in that position, a similar dumb play. But then Keegan missing both free throws while down two. Thankfully, we got that offensive rebound. And I think Keon was a part of getting in there. You know, Sabonis was in there as a big body, getting that rebound. And then Sabonis with the huge seal inside for Monk to go to the rim. And then Bain scores on the other end, and Fox comes up huge, hitting that shot to send us to overtime after another King stop. Fox almost turned it over too on that last possession, but the Kings offense down the stretch, it needs a lot of work because they get so close to turning it over and do turn it over quite a bit in those situations. And that could definitely and will definitely come back to bite us if we make the playoffs. And then overtime did not start out well, with Keegan saving the ball right to the Grizzlies. I don't know what he was doing. He had two teammates right there. If he turns around, he could find them. You don't just save the ball into no one without turning around and knowing where you're throwing it in that situation. And that led to a Grizzly dunk on the other end. But then obviously Monk coming up huge, in the Kings defense when they weren't in transition was very good. And the Kings defense, apart from the first quarter, like after that first quarter, the Kings defense was very good, and it was mainly transition. And so it was the offense hurting the defense. And it all just starts at the point of attack with Keon Ellis harassing Desmond Bain, setting the tone. And I think, you know, it's like, what's the difference between the first quarter and all the other quarters? It's like Ellis didn't start that quarter. Maybe that's a bit unfair, but still, Keon just brings so much in terms of defensive intensity and talent at the point of attack. And I am fully on board with starting him even when Huerter is healthy. Also, got to talk a little bit more about Malik Monk, who just was able to get to his spots and pull up from the mid range. But then the play that I loved was when he exploited the Grizzlies being super worried about that step back in the mid range off the pick and roll. And then he draws Jaren out far enough, then slips it right into Sabonis for the dunk. And that pretty much finished the game off. And that was so beautiful. I love watching guys score in one way and then exploit the defense, worrying about them scoring in that way and either scoring in a different way or making a pass off of it. Like, that's so fun to watch, just the decision making side of that. Now the Kings go on a 3-game road trip with 3 very winnable games. So it's at Toronto, at Washington, and that's a back-to-back there. But those are the especially winnable games. And then you go into Orlando, which is also a winnable game. Obviously a good team, but still a winnable game. This upcoming game in Toronto, obviously we haven't heard anything yet about Kevin Huerter, but I feel like it's safe to assume he won't play. Hopefully it's just not a long-term injury. There has been news Sasha Vezenkov was a full participant in practice, so that's big. He's nearing a return. Trey Lyles still out. It was a very stressful game last time we played Toronto, but we did come out with a win. But the Raptors have lost 7 straight games, including to the Trailblazers, the Pistons, and the only win before that was against the Hornets. I mean, the Raptors have just been awful since obviously making their trades and finally blowing it up. And so this is just another one of those games where you just have to find a way to win, but really just got to take care of the ball better because the Raptors have some solid defensive players. They got Scotty Barnes, Emmanuel Quickly, Bruce Brown, Ochai Agbaji. Like, they have some solid guys, and we gotta really get out on the 3-point shooters early on because they do have some guys that can get hot. I love my guys Grady Dick and Ochai Agbaji, but man, I do not want to see them get hot from 3. If Jamias Ramsey has a revenge game against us, that would be really sad. Yes, somehow he is still in the NBA, but especially these next 2 games, they're wins that we have to have before we get into this tougher stretch. But the Kings, they never play like that, so it should be very interesting. Anyways, that is it for this episode of the Roll Report. I will be back after that game against Toronto to recap it. So I'll see you guys then. Peace.